one. What should my downstairs unit be on my first conversion factor? Callie? So thanks for trying that one, but this is the imaginary line I want you to think about. So if we started with kg right here, I want kg to go downstairs here. There's always going to be an imaginary diagonal line that connects your first unit to the first conversion factors downstairs. Then in the middle on a problem like this, you're going to go to the base unit. So kilograms, you hear the word grams in there. The base unit for this one is just a G for grams. When it's a two-step problem, you got to go to that base unit in between. Sometimes it'll be grams, but sometimes it'll be seconds. Sometimes it'll be meters. It depends on the problem you're solving. Once you get that on there, that's helpful though, because now we've got that imaginary line again. If you have G right there, G needs to go downstairs on your next conversion factor, so it will cancel. So if you let your units kind of guide you for this setup, everything else will take care of itself. And now we're converting this one. Hallie, what unit is involved in this problem that we haven't really dealt with yet? Milligrams, yeah, that's what we're converting into. So that's the one that's going to end up being our upstairs unit on the final conversion factor. So now what I want you to do is focus in on one conversion factor at a time. So let's just look at this conversion factor alone and forget about the rest of the universe for a second. If we just look at that one conversion factor right there and forget about everything else, we want to think about how are grams and kilograms related. So this might be helpful to look at that chart we were looking at earlier, perhaps. Logan, do you know how grams and kilograms are related? Mm-hmm.
There's 1 million grams. Oh, never mind. There's 1,000.
Okay. And I asked about kilograms for this one, I think. Well, okay, so you're going to find kilo. Where's kilo on that chart? There we go. Yeah, so he pulled out his chart and he found kilo, and then he finally found it. There's 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. Are you sure, Logan? Are you sure it doesn't say there's 1,000 kilograms in 1 gram?
There's 1,000 grams.
He's confident. You're right. There are 1,000 grams in 1 kilogram. It's important to know for sure where you're putting that 1,000. The 1,000 goes with grams because there's 1,000 grams in 1 goes with kilogram. Usually you put the one with the bigger unit. The way that I like to do these, I'll put the one with the bigger of the 2 units, and you'll have the number with the other one. Now, if this question were about kiloliters and liters, could you swap out liters in place of grams? Yeah, you can treat any unit kind of the same with the prefixes. You just swap out the word seconds or liters or meters in place of grams. But our chart's about grams and this question's about grams, so it works out. Now we need to think about our next conversion factor in terms of the numbers that go with it. So just for a minute again, we're going to forget about the rest of the universe and we're just going to look at this conversion factor on its own. So we find milli on the chart. Okay, Spencer, what's the relationship between grams and milligrams? Check your chart. If it sounds like there would be a million because of the word milli and million sound similar, but for whatever reason, that's not the way it ended up. Yeah, 1,000. And Spencer, are there 1,000 grams in a milligram or are there 1,000 milligrams in a gram? Yeah, good. You know that. So 1,000 milligrams in a gram, because milligrams we know are really small. And that's what we'll get there. Now for your calculation, numbers that are on top get multiplied, numbers that are on the bottom get divided. You can basically ignore the ones because they don't change anything. So this one's both multiplying. 0.56 times 1,000 times 1,000 is what I would calculate. And Sydney, what do we get when we say 0.56 times 1,000 times 1,000? You got it, 560,000. I can kind of check my work a little bit at least. I can make sure the units went in the right place. Units that are on top will cancel with units on the bottom, even if they're not on the same exact ratio. They can be next to each other, but one has to be on top and one has to be on the bottom, and they get to cancel. So kilograms canceled, grams canceled, and we're left with milligrams, and that was kind of the point. I normally put that right up there, but I'm out of room. Try to squeeze it in. You can either put that in the final answer box, or I just like to put a box around my answer at the end there. The last thing I need to think about from time to time is sig figs, and they almost always take care of themselves. You don't have to think that hard on most problems. How many sig figs were in 0.56 kilograms to get started? 2. At the very end, decimal points absent, so those zeros are insignificant. I still have 2 sig figs. Most of the time that takes care of itself, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But it's good to check at the end that you have a reasonable number of sig figs. So a similar number of sig figs. If you're off by 1 sig fig, that will be fine, but you want to have a reasonable number of sig figs there. Yeah. I'll make one for you. Thanks for waiting. Okay, next we're going to get started on the next question there. I'll make a hall pass here. So you get started on the next one, or you can think of a question you want to ask if you want to ask me a question. Okay, Riley, go ahead and go. You're welcome. Does anybody think you might have a question on that first example? Okay, let's try number 2 together right here. All right, so fill in the blanks and read that sentence to me. Caitlin, so we are converting from blank to blank here. Thank you. Nanograms to grams. How many prefixes did Caitlin just say in that? Harper, how many prefixes are involved here? Just one. Good. So we're going from nanograms to grams. One prefix means one conversion factor setup. So I know this one's only going to require me to say the given amount. Okay, then when I say given, that's what I mean. And then I'm going to say times in a line once, and then I should be ready to get an answer from there. Nano has a prefix. Nano is the prefix. Grams doesn't have a prefix, so it's going to be shorter. Okay. Jonathan, if I do that little imaginary line thing, what should be my unit on the downstairs of my first conversion factor? Yeah, good. Nanograms, mg is going to go there. Caitlin, what should I put upstairs on this conversion factor? Yeah, just grams. Yes.
How do you know that it's just one version?
Good question. So when we did the fill in the blank sentence up here, nano is a prefix, right?
Yeah.
Is there a prefix in front of grams? Nope. And that grams is the same. It came from there. Okay. So when there's just one prefix, it's probably just going to need one conversion factor setup. That's a good question. All right, now we need a relationship. Use your chart if you need to. Ethan, what's the relationship between nanograms and grams?
There's 1 billion nanograms in 1 gram.
Yeah, 1 billion. So I got to get 9 zeros in there. To go down below because I'm out of room. Nanograms are teeny, teeny, teeny. So it takes 1 billion of them to make a gram. What operation would I do for this one? Would I multiply or divide? What do you think, Georgia? Yeah, I'm going to end up saying 1.2 divided by a billion because a billion's on the downstairs. It's on the bottom. So that means we divide. So you could do it in your calculator if you wanted. 1.2 divided by a billion. Some of those calculators might run out of room, and they might end it right here. If you have a big screen on your calculator, it might give you one more digit. So that doesn't happen too often. This number is just so small in the end. There's actually a 2 hanging out, but there's not room on most calculators right there. Inner work, NG and NG are going to get to cancel. That was the whole point. And then we're left with a final unit. Rihanna, what's my final unit for my final answer here? Grams, yep. So I went ahead and added that extra 2 that I know is hanging out that some calculators don't show because they run out of space. That 2 is still hanging out right there. And that keeps 2 sig figs. 2 sig figs to start. Decimal point is present, comes from the Pacific side. Those are all insignificant, and I still have my 2 sig figs there in the first place. So the value's the same, and even the certainty's the same. Any questions on number 2? We're going to do the back. If you feel good about this, you're welcome to go faster than me. You do have to show your work on this, but I'm going to do number 3 along with you because 3 is the first one where the word grams is not involved at all. And I want to make sure everybody can apply these prefixes to any unit, not just grams. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking. All right, so number 3, I don't have mine in front of me, so Campbell, will you tell me what number 3 says? Good job, megahertz to gigahertz. In megahertz, it turns out the abbreviation will be M, and then hertz is always HZ, so megahertz to gigahertz. GHZ. How many prefixes are in this particular question? Bailey? There's 2 prefixes, yeah. So we're probably going to need to use 2 conversion factors so we know how to set this up. You're good to go, Carter. So the very first thing I'll do is write down what's given. Turner, what is given? What's the first thing I would write down? So that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. Given means what are we starting with? What quantity is given in the problem? So in this one, the given would be the number with the unit that I have, my starting place. So whenever I say given, I just mean what is the problem giving us to work with there? Okay, Luke, how many times do I need to write down times in a line? Yeah, do it twice because I have 2 prefixes, mega and giga, each need a conversion factor to deal with them. Okay, 2 prefixes means 2-step conversion. All right, Aiden, what do you think we should put downstairs on our very first conversion factor?
Mega.
Good job. Yeah, megahertz. Imaginary line. It's going to make me put megahertz here. Now, on the first page on the front, we always put grams on the top of that conversion factor. Does this question mention grams at all? No, this question is dealing with hertz as the base unit. So megahertz, the base unit is hertz, so that's what we'll convert it into at first, with hertz on the upstairs. HZ goes upstairs here. Again, that's my base. Base unit is just what would the unit be if you took that prefix away. Okay, we can follow the same pattern again. Now we've got hertz up top, so downstairs, that imaginary line. Camden, what should I put downstairs on the last conversion factor? Good job, yeah, hertz. What needs to go upstairs on this last conversion factor, Lily? Yeah, what unit needs to go upstairs on my last conversion factor? Yeah, good job, gigahertz, because that's the last unit left over. That's what I got to finish with. Whatever unit you're converting into by the end is going to be your final unit. Okay, now let's look at individual conversion factors. Looking at that green conversion factor with hertz and megahertz, see if you can apply your chart with prefixes that's about megagrams and grams. Hertz, you can just treat hertz like they're the same thing. It's a totally different quantity, but you can apply the prefixes in the same way. So Wilson, what is the relationship between megahertz and hertz?
Megahertz is 1 megahertz is 1 million hertz.
Good. You said 1 megahertz, so I'll put 1 with megahertz. Is 1 million hertz. Megahertz is a big unit, so it gets the 1. Okay, we got to apply the same idea with gigahertz and hertz. Callie, what would the relationship between gigahertz and hertz be?
1 gigahertz.
Okay. 1 gigahertz is 1 billion hertz. I want to stop right there. Is anybody asking in your head, where are these people getting hertz? Because hertz is not on this chart. You can pretend that you're treating hertz like grams. Okay, you are treating hertz like grams. The chart says there are 1 billion grams in a gigagram. So I can say there's 1 billion hertz in a gigahertz. I can swap out the word grams for hertz. I can do it with seconds, I can do it with liters if I wanted to. So you can apply these prefix charts to anything other than grams too. All right, so now if I wanted to calculate this quick in my calculator, I might say 1904.3 times a million divided by a billion. You get the right answer. One thing that's kind of cool that a lot of people like to do when you have these big numbers to simplify, you can, since some are on top, some are on the bottom, if you want to let sets of 3 zeros kind of cancel out with each other, it just simplifies the calculation. Then you might do it in your head if you wanted to, but you don't have to do that. The most straightforward way I'll do it, and I'll just do it the most straightforward way, 1904.3 times a million divided by a billion. The units canceled like they were supposed to. That's why we set them up that way. Megahertz and megahertz canceled. Hertz and hertz canceled. And then, Hallie, what do you get for your final number there? Huh? Nope. After I do that operation, what I get. Yeah. Do the calculation. You got it. And Logan, what's my final unit going to be here? Yeah, GHz gigahertz. I'll put a box around it. Sig figs work out fine here. I started with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sig figs, and I ended with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sig figs. they'll almost always work out. There's once or twice they're not perfect. Yeah.
I've noticed like a pattern in some of the questions, like just move the decimal point.
Yeah, it always is going to move the decimal point, and if I didn't have a whole lot of faith in you guys, I would just teach you to move the decimal points. But I want you to learn how to do it a better way that's more applicable. It's more challenging, it's more work, but it's more applicable to stuff we do later in the class.
Yeah.
So I'm making you do it a little bit harder way of doing it. You can even Google these to get all the right answers, but I want to see your work. I want to see your dimensional
I like
analysis.
this is harder than it would be just moving the decimal, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
This is scale.
Yeah, it is a scale. Good way to talk about it. We use this with the periodic table eventually in the class. We use this method, so that's why I'm making you learn how to do it this way rather than, again, if I didn't have a whole lot of faith in you, I would just have to move the decimal point. This is going to be your assignment to complete. If you want me to work one-on-one with you for the next couple of minutes, if you're not quite sure how we're using that chart, I'll be happy to go over that with you. You can, exactly. Yep. Well, yeah, sure. That's exactly right.
How do you know when the big numbers on the bottom?
If you flew through these because you maybe knew how to do it already or something and you're done with the calculator, if you want to return a calculator right now, feel free to come on up and return a calculator. But if you're still working, got a couple minutes left, you can knock out one or two. We'll check this tomorrow the same way we checked today. I'll stamp it if it's complete, and I want to see your work. Quiz. This review is optional, but I know some people like to get a jump start on studying. If you know how to do sig figs really well and you don't want to do that part of the review, this is the review that I made to help get you ready for Friday's quiz. It's just if you wanted to go ahead and start studying today and you would like to do a review. Optional review for Friday's quiz. You'll see the last page is stuff we'll get into the next couple of days, but maybe the first 3 pages I think you're probably familiar with so far. Calculators, you go back into the calculator tab up here. Write your
Cam.
Dang. Steven doing the most.
That's my one.
Oh, okay.
Bye, Mr. Reeves.
See you later. Have a great day.
So what does he think?
I think that is weird. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
No. When you told me yesterday, I was not expecting that part.
How's it going today?
Huh?
How's it going?
Sad.
Sad?
Yeah.
Sad? Sad Tuesday.